Well, first of all, I just want to thank Lou and Katie for the opportunity to speak today and echo the happy birthdays, feliz cumpleaños, and sorionak in the different languages that I can master. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. I found it incredibly rewarding to be part of this community, and I always find that I learn a little bit more every week, so thank you. I'm Iratxe, I'm involved with ASA Bio, so what I'm going to be doing is tell you a little bit about the organization and also speak about the ASA Bio community we work with. So ASA Bio is a non-for-profit organization. I'm delighted that Laura got into the codes, etc., because I don't have a very great understanding. So I'll stop with non-for-profit. We are a small organization with a mission to make life sciences communication faster and more transparent. And to drive the work towards this mission, we have two main areas of focus in terms of our activities. The first is around the adoption of preprints in the life sciences. So we try to run activities around, obviously, community engagement, which I will speak about a little bit, but we also develop resources around preprints and facilitate getting stakeholders together to, again, perhaps discuss pressing issues and see if we can find solutions together. The second area of focus relates to transparency in peer review. So we've done some work around advocacy to drive transparency in peer review at journal level, but we have an interest in this in essentially all of the types of peer review, whether that's within journals or in other platforms that provide journal agnostic peer review, and obviously also in the context of preprints. So I'll be focusing a little bit on preprints because that's where the majority of our interactions with the community take place. And I'm going to cover a little bit what a preprint is, because I don't know if everyone here would be familiar, but I'll try to keep this rather brief. Essentially, the reason why we have a big focus on preprints is because we think that this can really speed the dissemination of research and drive discovery in science. So essentially, the way that research dissemination has worked traditionally within the journal ecosystem is the authors will submit their paper to a journal. They may get a rejection based on perhaps the scope of it, whatever it may be. Then they try another journal, run peer review. They may get a request for revision, so that adds to the process. And eventually, hooray, the paper is accepted and it's available to the rest of the scientific community. It means that that process takes usually at least 4 or 5 months when it works very well, but it can take up to years. And while the paper is with a journal, this is only available to the editor and the reviewers. Essentially, the rest of the community doesn't have access to that latest discovery, which, again, that adds to the delay in terms of potentially using those findings. By comparison, what you can do is take the same manuscript or an earlier preliminary version of the manuscript that you could have submitted to a journal and post it on a preprint server, which is a publicly accessible platform. The authors submit to the preprint server, and usually there is certain screening done, is pretty light touch. And usually in a matter of days, the manuscript will be publicly accessible, which means that the rest of the community can provide feedback. The authors may choose to make revisions. As Emma was explaining earlier, there is the option of doing versions. So the authors actually may say, okay, this was great feedback from a peer who has seen my preprint on Twitter, and they decide to do another experiment, post a new version on the preprint server. It's very straightforward. And the idea here is that by facilitating the dissemination through a preprint, we can actually, again, accelerate progress in science, because you would make the findings available in a much faster way. And the authors actually, and this is also compatible with the journal process, because many authors, what they choose to do is actually post the paper as a preprint and in parallel submit to a journal, so it can go through the usual peer review process. So we think that preprints provide advantages to the scientific enterprise as a whole, but that there are also certain benefits for researchers themselves. I think that the benefits for preprints in terms of how they can be useful and beneficial for researchers apply across the board to all of the demographics of the scientific community, but I think they bring particular value to early career researchers because a preprint is a great way for the researcher to actually have an early proof of their productivity. Again, they can just choose to propose the preprint and they get a copy and evidence of the research that they have done. This can be really useful, especially again, if you're an early career researcher, in terms of having that proof of what you've been working on. Certain institutions and funders accept the citation of preprints for grant applications and for job applications, etc. So it can support career progression. It can also support having the the researchers increase their profile and visibility. A lot of researchers are actually using Twitter and social media to share their preprints once they post them, again, to perhaps request comments or ask others to read their work and give them suggestions. So it's a great way of increasing their visibility within their community, facilitate networking, and actually can even open the door to potential collaborations, because you may say, I'm working on this particular project, here's my preprint, and some other groups who may be working on similar projects that may say, actually, we're working on something similar, why not collaborate rather than compete? An additional important benefit of preprints is the fact that they are free to post and free to read. So they are accessible to anybody with an internet connection. It means that anyone can participate in preprint posting. There are no fees associated with posting, as it is the case for some journals. Emma has mentioned Open Access Week, so I just want to come back to that briefly to say that not every preprint is open access, but they are all free to read. Whether they are open access or not depends on the license that they apply. But I think we are going to be moving much more into free and open access, hopefully. Right, so at ASA Bio, we work with the ASA Bio community. This started organically, and originally we had an ambassadors program. So I mentioned this in case some of you may be more familiar with that. We recently decided to change the terminology to ASA Bio Community because we felt it probably reflected more the level of interaction, and because we wanted to introduce different elements of engagement within the community, such as the Fellows program, which I will be speaking about in a second. But essentially, the reason why it was important for our organization to have a community is that we want to support, again, making research communication better, but always keeping scientists in mind. So we want to provide resources and tools that support researchers, and to know what is most valuable for them, we need to be in contact with the researchers themselves and understand their needs. We also want to support change in research culture. So it is, again, important that we keep in touch with the researchers themselves and understand within which culture they operate, and again, what may be needed to bring changes there. I showed this diagram from Brian Nosek at the Center of Open Science because I think it's a very nice summary of the different steps that you may need to go through to change research culture. And as you can see here very clearly, apart from once you have gone over, it is possible, we have the infrastructure and it's easy to use, you need to have the community buy-in so that you bring that change and make it normative. An additional item that I wanted to mention is that I have found incredibly valuable in my role to work with the ASA Bio community, also from the perspective of we are a very small organization, we are a team of 4 currently, and working with the community members has been critical, at least for me, in terms of bringing many projects forward in a much more varied way, and probably at a different scale that we would have otherwise been able to do with the team of staff that we have. So something that I wanted to mention specifically within the context of the engagement activities that we do with the community is the ASA Biofellows program. We do some other activities more broadly with the whole of the community, such as community calls, and we have newsletters, etc. But something that we implemented this year specifically was the Fellows program. It's actually currently running. It's a 6-month program. It's running until November. And the reason why we put this in place is that we had always had this vision of saying the ASA Bio Community members will become, again, these representatives to their communities to explain all the benefits of preprints and help those who perhaps are not so sure about preprinting, take that step, etc. But we felt that if we wanted to really empower them to act in that role, we need to give them some structure and tools that would allow them to do that. So we wanted to have a program that provided the latest evidence and knowledge about preprints so that they had all of the information that they need, but also support them in developing some communication and outreach skills. So again, they could reach out to their own communities and have conversations around preprints. And also we had a specific goal of saying, we hope that this provides the professional development opportunities for them. So they will build some skills and hopefully meet some other people and expand their network. So we are running this program with 26 participants, broad geographical representation. And it's structured in a way where we have monthly calls with the whole of the fellows group. We also have different avenues to speak to them individually if that's needed, to check in how they are doing, see if they need any support. And then we organize, well, actually they mostly organize themselves around project work. So we have 6 groups, each working on a specific project that is preprint related, but they are actually shaping the project and the deliverables themselves. And I wanted to mention a few of the things they've been working on. This absolutely doesn't cover all of the things that they are working on because it's a pretty amazing group. But it's very interesting to watch how many of the milestones on the work is coming to the fore now that we have been within the program for 5 months. So a few examples I listed here. We have many of them working on blog posts, doing outreach. This is an example from a group who is specifically interested in engaging the clinical community, who traditionally has had less of a culture of preprinting. So they are trying to bring the conversation to those groups through a series of blog posts. We'll have a group that is working on preprint related infographics. This is an example of one of the ones that they are developing, but they have a whole batch of them, which I think will be a great template for the organization as a whole. And the last example is from, actually it's a panel discussion that we ran online on Monday. It was conceptualized and ran and chaired by a group of fellows. So they pretty much did the whole thing. And it was a great opportunity again for them to reach out to others in their community. We had almost 100 attendees and a diverse panel. It was a great conversation. So yes, I mean, I just wanted to showcase all of their work because I'm very, very proud of what they are doing. And there is much more to come from this program. So I think it's been quite successful and probably will continue next year. And I think I leave it there. But thank you so much for listening, and my contact details there.